we have got one very interesting story, a theme park story that does not focus on either Disney or Universal. Instead, it focuses on the world over at Six Flags. The theme park, Six Flags theme park shock as Knott's and Magic Mountain presidents were fired after the $8 billion merger. More layoffs are coming. Now, that's going to be all of the theme park presidents throughout Six Flags in this new organization will be, are going to be laid off. Now, the ripple effect of the $8 billion Six Flags Cedar Fair merger have officially reached Southern California, with Knott's Berry Farm and Six Flags Magic Mountain losing their longtime presidents in a dramatic reshaping of leadership across the company's 27 amusement parks. As part of a sweeping operational overhaul under the newly merged entertainment giant, Six Flags Cedar Fair has laid off Knott's president John Storbeck and Magic Mountain president Jeff Harris. Both will remain in their positions through the end of May, but will not be replaced. So they're just eliminating these positions entirely. According to a statement from Six Flags, the company has eliminated all individual park presidents, centralizing decision-making at the corporate level under a newly implemented regional operating model. Quote, under this new alignment, we have centralized certain functions and responsibilities at the corporate level, said Six Flags in a statement. The company also made some changes to the roles and responsibilities of park leaders, sharpening the focus on execution, the guest experience, and associates. In total, 10% of the company's full-time staff will also be cut, including 135 full-time roles across California parks such as Knott's Berry Farm, Magic Mountain, Discovery Kingdom, and California's Great America. The company says eligible employees will either be offered part-time roles or receive severance packages. So, Vash, I know you've been following this pretty closely. This is a pretty major occurrence in the theme park world.
This is a huge story. All 27 presidents basically gone. Apparently, this is part of a reduction in management that's going to see probably 135 at least people removed from at least the Southern California parks. We're probably talking about 10% overall. I know Cedar. Well, I say Cedar Fair for a reason, but I know Six Flags announced this as part of a bigger consolidation effort where we're talking about the elimination of about 10% of their workforce right here. But this is some major talent at every single level that's been affected by this. Like, for example, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for just a second. John Storbeck here, he was with Disney for over 30 years until Knott's Berry Farm was successful in snatching him up back in, I believe, 2016. And he was the guy that came up with the idea of like, okay, well, could we do like an outdoor food festival during the COVID time period? Because remember, these parks were closed for a dramatically longer time than they were, let's say, in Florida, for example. So how can we keep that revenue flowing? This was the guy that actually made that possible. It's sad to lose so much talent from so many noteworthy executives that have brought us some really amazing memories in the past. I know that Matt We Met, if you don't know the name, if you don't know the face, well, you definitely know the work, because he was the guy that came in from the Disney Cruise Lines, was brought over to Disneyland Resort and really reinvigorated that in entire resort complex there over the course of a couple of years in the lead up to the 50th anniversary of that specific theme park right there, and really dramatically transformed that area. It was so good that Cedar Fair picked him up and he was the CEO from then on. He says this, quote, "This die was cast when the merger was signed," Ouimet wrote on LinkedIn. "It isn't because the business or the individuals were performing poorly. This is purely math." So that was very, very profound to see Ouimet actually comment in this way. Again, he is not currently the CEO. He stepped down a few years back, but I recognize this, that I wasn't up to watching talented colleagues being asked to exit in order to archive the cost synergies that were promised to investors, Ouimet wrote on LinkedIn. In recent days, that parade of departures has stepped off. Several of the industry's best are marching into the unknown on a timeline not of their own choosing. This is definitely having ripple effects for many in both the kind of themed entertainment amusement industry at large, but also to the enthusiast industry. Because from what I'm hearing, I was actually talking to Almighty Coasters, a YouTube channel there, does some great work. I think he's got almost 600 credits to his name. So he's definitely ridden an amazing amount of coasters in his day. But apparently he was talking to me and he's like, look, listen, if you have favorites amongst the Six Flags chain of coasters that you want to go on, you better do it now. because
Wow.
your favorite coasters might actually be affected by this merger. We've seen that with King to Caw, right? I'm hearing maybe all Aero coasters might be affected by this merger right here, as the Cedar Fair executives, who are pretty much now in charge, want to keep operating costs down. They've had issues with Aero in the past. I think SNS took over a lot of the parts facilitation and so forth, and it's like, look, it's too expensive. That means X2 might be gone. Tatsu, a B&M coaster, might be gone within the next 5 years. So they're making dramatic moves in order to keep as many of these theme parks in the chain going right here. This that we're seeing on screen is just one aspect of this multi-year effort to reduce operating costs and increase revenues.
When I look at something like this, obviously, Disneyland has a president, Walt Disney World has a president, and those parks run very differently. Those resorts run very differently. With Six Flags, they're not as large of operations. They're not as intricate of operations. When someone is fired for structural reasons as opposed to performance reasons, I don't know that it feels any better as a person who, loses their job here. But at the same time, I think that Cedar Fair, which this is the question that comes through. Cedar Fair, I think, was a better run company than Six Flags, but Six Flags is the stronger brand, arguably, between the two of them. And when two companies merge, one of those cultures absorbs the other. It's just there's almost never a merger of equals. Martin Stone and I were talking about that one time. He's very smart when we're talking about all of these things. This is
I sometimes call him Smartin.
That's funny. I like that. It would also help us in trying to differentiate Marvin in Smartin, although you are smart, Marvin. Also pointing out that Vash just rattled off all of those facts about theme parks that are not Disney. I want to praise him for that. So just looking at this, I think that this is something where regional parks have a chance to be more effective as Disney kind of lessens here, and people there is something that can be done to bring a new audience to these Six Flags parks. There's going to be more scrutiny on them as they're lowering costs, though. They need to keep the quality in check. That's the only warning I would give to the newly formed Six Flags Cedar Fair together here is, in the age of Instagram, people are going to be on you like white on rice in a glass of milk on a paper plate in a snowstorm, as far as posting about your faults here. So I don't know. That's more power to the people who just joined the job market here, though.
Yes, I think it's always easy to overlook theme parks that are not Disney or Universal, right? But what you don't realize is these parks are such an integral part of local economies across the country. These are the parks that people are going to, that, no one is traveling across the country to go to Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson, New Jersey, but among New Jerseyans, like, going to Six Flags in the summer was a huge deal. So these are parks that are central to the economies, and even, I think, in a lot of ways, the identities of a lot of these areas. And so these major changes, these major sweeping changes across the board, are going to be hugely felt in these individual markets. Not in the same way that big changes to Disney are affected worldwide, but ignore them at your peril, theme park fans, because there are some very classic roller coasters here. I'm sure, Vash, you agree with me on this.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you tremendously. They're also a stepping stone to going to those destination type resorts like Walt Disney World, for example, or Universal Studios in Orlando right there. Also, too, ride manufacturers like Intamin, for example. I remember Cedar Fair kind of wrote Intamin off at a certain point, and now that it's now Six Flags and you have 27 parks thereabouts, well, that's less business that ride manufacturer can actually build or contribute towards, at least in North America. So how does that affect them? How does that affect their output and who they can actually have on staff? Like, this has ripple effects across the industry. And it does absolutely affect Disney and Universal to some degree. I thought this was such an important story to actually highlight, because with this merger, a lot of people had a lot of thoughts going into this, and now, after having seen the consequences of it, it all becomes it's a stark reality that we're living in here. Jonas, I will say the quality I've heard for like food at Six Flags Magic Mountain, for example, has increased and improved, and perhaps maybe taking off some of these more expensive coasters offline, can help in providing a good quality experience. But it remains to be seen at this point. We're just gonna have to hope and see as the story develops.
Absolutely. We'll be following that story with great interest, as Palpatine might say to young Anakin Skywalker.
Thanks for watching That Park Plays News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media account.